I was actually driving at the time on the highway, and sort of felt it coming on, sort of, heard music, again, um, I think my current neurologist says, it's probably a sign that my seizures begin as a focal seizure in the auditory center of the brain and then spread. So I started feeling that and realizing, oh, something's wrong here. Pulled the car over, quickly took an extra pill that I had, in my dashboard there. But it was too late. The next thing I knew, again, I was in the hospital, and my car weaved across 2 lanes of traffic, across a meridian, across 2 other lanes of traffic, and came to rest close to an abutment. By some miracle, no crash. The car was fine. I ended up fine. My dog in the back seat was fine. A very kind fire marshal took him home with him so that my wife could pick him up afterwards. Medication is great, and when it works, but when it doesn't, it's a bit of a scary, terrible thing. So at that time, and I was a few hours away I was actually on a long distance road trip, so I was a few hours away. My wife gets a call in the middle of a Sunday afternoon, says, your husband's been in an accident, we need you to come get him. So she quickly rounded up a couple of our close friends, and they came out, to a several hour trip, to come get me at the hospital. So I'm very, very lucky to have, such good friends to help out. I went a few more months seizure free, and then had another seizure. This time was at work, right in the middle of a meeting in the conference room. It was somewhat of a stressful meeting. My boss was there, my colleagues were there, and next thing, again, seized and ended up at the hospital again, and the whole rigmarole. So there's sort of no more vulnerable feeling than being at work with your boss and everyone, and you're unconscious on the floor. When I started this job, I was, again, my seizures were pretty well under control, so I didn't necessarily bring it up or talk to anybody about it. So my boss and my coworkers were obviously very surprised when I had this seizure at work. I remember, and in fact, because I left campus on an ambulance, I had to get documentation, permission from a doctor to return to work a couple of days later. But that I kind of say that's when I was forced out of the closet. There's a psychologist, and I forget his name, but has written a paper about the epilepsy closet and sort of that effect where people don't, feel I don't know, ashamed or concerned about bringing it up because of the stigmas attached and all these things. And so I'm lucky that my boss and my coworkers were understanding and very supportive. So I'm an administrator at a community college, and so I'm able to work from home a couple of days a week. My boss was understanding about that. I mean, the biggest trouble was not being able to drive, and there's no good public transportation near my workplace. And so, for the time when my license was suspended, I'm taking an Uber to and from work, and that gets expensive. That gets difficult. Or try to bum a ride from coworkers. I mean, that's, in a practical way, that's one of the most difficult things about it. But there's also, I think there's a psychological effect of, are people looking at me differently? Are people looking down on me in some way, or seeing me, through this lens of, being different. I remember, in fact, after that, I had a seizure at work. My HR, a person from HR reached out to me to go through the paperwork and things. And she said, I'm also the college's ADA representative. So if you, if you want to go through any process with that, we can guide you through it. And ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I thought, disability, I've never thought of myself as someone who's quote unquote disabled, and so that was something of a reckoning and something of a moment where I had to think about this condition as how does this fit into my identity, and I think I'm still working through that in some ways. I think it's a continuing process. So, and in the United States, it varies state by state. Different states have different laws around, epilepsy and driving. And so in the state where I live, the time period is 6 months of seizure freedom in order to establish, that a medication or treatment is working. And so, so having the license suspended for 6 months really is, it becomes a difficult, hindrance to your lifestyle in many ways. Where we live, we are in a fairly walkable neighborhood. So I can walk to the supermarket, I can walk to the drugstore. We even have a farmer's market that's in walking distance. So that's very nice. But, there are a lot of things that you don't think about when that, oh, gee, how am I going to get to this other doctor's appointment that's, 30 minutes away, right? Again, Uber has been my friend for a long time. But it is, because it's in some ways it's your freedom, right? And your independence. And again, we have friends that live close by that have been very generous with their time, and if you ever need to drive to Costco, we're going there all the time, so just let us know, and those sorts of things. But there is, you hate to be you hate to inconvenience your friends and your family and those sorts of things, so it's very tricky. It is very tricky. Someone made the point, I think I read online somewhere, someone made the point that other conditions don't necessarily carry this burden. If I had a heart condition, where there's a chance that I could have a heart attack while driving, generally one's license isn't suspended for that, and so why is epilepsy this special thing, right? I get it in some ways, but in other ways it is, it does feel like a real hindrance and real burden. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are a car dependent culture here in America, and not drive. When I was going through that period, I would tell people that I don't drive, and it just doesn't comprehend. They can't comprehend it. It doesn't compute, right? How can an adult in America not drive? So, yeah. So it's an unfortunate reality,